"We thought you were in London," my mother said, staring at me through the narrow crack of my own front door. She didn't open it wider. She didn't apologize. Her hand stayed firmly wrapped around the brand new deadbolt she had installed while I was away. Over her shoulder, I could see my sister Alice stretched out on my white sofa, casually sipping red wine with her shoes still on. "Alice lost her apartment," Mom added, like that alone explained why my digital lock had been drilled out. "She needs this house more than you do. Go stay at a hotel." They hadn't just broken in. They had settled in. "Open the door, Mom." My voice came out low, vibrating in my chest. I wasn't asking, I was warning her. Wendy hesitated before opening the door another inch, keeping her foot firmly wedged against the frame so it couldn't swing wider. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked irritated, like I was some stranger interrupting her evening. "Keep your voice down," she whispered sharply. "The twins finally fell asleep in the guest room." She paused. "Well, their room now." My stomach twisted. "Their room. Mom, I live here." "This is my house. And Alice is your sister," she fired back instantly, her voice turning sharp enough to slice through the air. "She was evicted yesterday, Megan." Travis lost his job again, and the landlord dumped their stuff out on the curb. What exactly were we supposed to do? Let them sleep in the van? She stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind her. The heavy click of the unauthorized deadbolt locking echoed in the quiet night like a gunshot. She folded her arms across her chest, completely blocking my view inside. "We knew you were in London for another week," she continued, as if my work trip was somehow the real problem. "We figured we'd get them settled before you got back so it wouldn't be such a shock." My pulse quickened. "We've already moved their beds in," she added casually. "Your dad came over this morning and enrolled Lucas in the elementary school down the street." She shrugged. "It's done, Megan." It wasn't a request. It was a tactical maneuver, a fait accompli. By moving furniture, changing the locks, and registering the kids for school, they had created a situation that would make removing them feel cruel. They weren't asking for help. They were daring me to be the villain who reversed it. "You used the spare key," I said slowly. "The one I gave you for emergencies." "This is an emergency," she snapped immediately. "Your sister has nowhere to go." Her eyes flicked toward the house. "And honestly, look at this place. 3 bedrooms, 3,000 square feet. And it's just you and a laptop." She shook her head in disapproval. "It's selfish, Megan, it's wasteful." Inside the house, I caught a glimpse of Alice passing the front window. She was wearing my cashmere robe. She looked comfortable, relaxed, completely unconcerned that she had just taken over my home. "I want them out," I said. For a moment, Wendy's face changed. The aggression melted away and something softer replaced it. Her favorite tactic, martyrdom. "How can you be so cold?" she asked quietly. "Look at those babies in there. They've been through so much trauma." Her voice trembled slightly. "They finally feel safe here." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "If you throw them out tonight, the police will see a rich aunt kicking toddlers onto the street." Her eyes searched my face. "Is that really who you are?" She wasn't appealing to love. She was leveraging shame. She knew I wouldn't drag crying children out of their beds. She was counting on my morality to subsidize Alice's lack of it. "I need to think," I said finally. "You do that," Wendy replied, already turning back toward the door. "We'll save you a plate." She slipped inside. The deadbolt clicked again. I stood alone on my own porch, staring at the grain of the wood door, realizing that I had effectively become homeless at my own address. Slowly, I turned and walked back to my rental car. My legs felt heavy, numb. I sank into the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned pale. For years, I believed my success made my mother proud. I thought every promotion, every raise, every milestone was another point on a scoreboard proving I was the good daughter. But sitting there in the dark, locked out of the house I paid for, I finally understood the truth. I was wrong. Sitting there in the dark, watching the glow of my living room lights I paid for, I finally understood. To Wendy, I was not a person. I was a resource. I was a silo of grain to be harvested whenever Alice, the golden child, was hungry. My stability was not a virtue. It was a backup generator for their chaos. They did not love me for my success. They felt entitled to it. I looked at the house one last time. They thought they had won because they were inside and I was outside. They thought they had checkmated me with guilt. But they forgot one thing. I solve problems for a living, and I never enter a negotiation without a kill switch. I walked back up to the porch. I did not knock. I just waited. When Wendy opened the door, she was holding a plate of lasagna. A smug smile plastered on her face. "I knew you would be sensible," she said, extending the plate. I ignored it. "I am not hungry," I said, my voice calm, professional. The voice I used when firing underperforming contractors. "I have thought about it. You are right. I cannot throw Alice and the kids out on the street." Wendy's shoulders dropped 3 in. Relief. Victory. "Oh, thank God. I knew you had a heart, Megan. Come in, come in." The twins are dying to see their auntie. But I said, stopping her before she could usher me inside. "If they are staying, we need to do this right. I cannot have 5 people living here off the books. My insurance will not cover it, and if anything happens to the kids, I would be liable." Wendy waved a hand. "We do not need to involve insurance. It is just family helping family. It is asset protection." "Mom," I said, stepping past her into the foyer. The smell of cheap wine and diaper cream hit me instantly. And actually, I have a better idea. If Alice stays here as my estate caretaker, I can put her on my company payroll. It is a tax write-off for me and for her. Well, it means full corporate health insurance. I saw Alice's ears perk up from the living room. She was still on the couch, but she had lowered her wine glass. "Health insurance?" Alice asked, sitting up. "Like dental and vision, everything." I lied smoothly. "Gold tier, no deductibles, but to make it legal, you have to be an employee. That means signing an employment contract." It was the greed hook. I knew Alice. She had not worked a real job in 6 years, and Travis's freelance gigs barely covered beer money, let alone a dentist. The promise of free, high-end benefits was the one thing that could override her laziness. "I can have the papers drawn up in an hour," I said, pulling out my laptop. "It is standard stuff. The job description is basically keep the house standing. In exchange, you get the room, board, and the benefits package." "That sounds really generous," Alice said, narrowing her eyes. She was suspicious, but the greed was winning. "It is a win-win," I said. "I get a tax break. You get security." I sat at my kitchen island, which was covered in sticky juice rings, and started typing. I was not writing a lease. A lease creates a landlord-tenant relationship, which in this state means I would need a court order and 6 months to evict her. I was writing a caretaker agreement. Internally, I recited the legal distinction like a mantra. A tenant pays rent and has possession. A lessee, like a hotel guest or a living nanny, has a revocable privilege to be on the property. If the employment ends, the license ends immediately. No probate, no eviction court, just a trespassing charge. I added the clauses burying the lethal ones in the middle of the benefits section. Clause 4A, housing is provided strictly as a condition of employment. Clause 9C, termination of employment results in immediate revocation of housing license. Clause 12, employee consents to 247 video monitoring in common areas for asset protection purposes. And the final nail, Clause 15, employee authorizes employer to conduct comprehensive background and credit checks for insurance bonding. I printed it out on my wireless printer, which thankfully they had not unplugged. "Here," I said, sliding the warm pages across the granite. "Sign this and you are covered." Alice picked up the pen. Wendy beamed, looking between us like she had single-handedly brokered world peace. They thought they had just secured a free ride for life. They had no idea they were signing a confession. Alice scanned the document, her eyes darting over the paragraphs like a stone skipping water. She was not reading. She was hunting for keywords. Benefits, salary, 0 rent. "Do I really have to log maintenance hours?" she asked, tapping a fingernail on page 3. Travis does most of the heavy lifting. It is just for the IRS audit trail, I said, leaning against the counter. Keeping my posture relaxed, put down 5 hours a week watering plants, checking the HVAC. As long as the paperwork exists, the benefits apply. Wendy hovered over her shoulder, practically vibrating with impatience. Just sign it, Alice. Your sister is offering you a lifeline. Don't pick it apart until it breaks. Alice sighed, the dramatic, put-upon sigh of someone being forced to accept charity. She clicked the pen. Fine, but I need the insurance card by Monday. The twins have checkups. Monday, I promised. She pressed the pen to the paper. The blue ink flowed, carving her name onto the signature line. Alice P. Miller. I watched the loops of her handwriting close. It was a fascinating moment. In her mind, she was signing a lease for a free mansion. In the eyes of the law, she was signing a confession that she had no property rights. That signature stripped her of every tenant protection the state of Oregon offered. She was not a resident anymore. She was an employee, and in at-will employment states, you can be fired for any reason at any time. The trap snapped shut the moment she lifted the pen. And here, I said, signing my own name with a flourish. Official. I pulled a slip of paper from my pocket. These are the new door codes. I reactivated the smart locks. The manual deadbolt Mom installed. Let's just keep that unlocked for now. Okay, fire safety. Wendy snatched the paper. See, was that so hard? Now we can all breathe. I have to go, I said, checking my watch. My flight to London leaves in 3 hours, and I still need to get to the airport. Go, go, Wendy said, shooing me toward the door. She was already opening the fridge, claiming my territory. We will hold down the fort. Have a safe trip. I walked out the front door, the same one they had barred me from an hour ago. I got into my rental car and drove down the block, parking just around the corner, out of sight. I was not going to London. I was going to the Embassy Suites 3M away. I pulled out my iPad and opened the security app. The feed from the kitchen camera popped up in crisp 4K resolution. Alice was standing by the kitchen island. She was not celebrating. She was rushing to the front door. A moment later, she reappeared on screen, clutching a thick stack of envelopes, mail she must have intercepted from the mailbox while I was arguing with Mom. She did not open them. She looked over her shoulder, checking if Wendy was watching, and then shoved the entire stack into the back of the pantry behind the cereal boxes. My eyes narrowed. People do not hide junk mail. They hide warnings. I started the car. The trap was set, but it looked like Alice had already brought her own shovel to dig the grave. I wasn't in London. I was 3 miles away in a junior suite at the Embassy Suites, eating a club sandwich and watching my life fall apart in 4K resolution. I had set up my command center on the hotel desk. My laptop displayed the security feeds from the kitchen, the living room, and the hallway. The caretaker agreement Alice signed authorized 24/7 video monitoring in common areas for asset protection. She had signed it without reading it, and now that signature was the only thing keeping me sane. On screen, my living room looked like a frat house after a bender. It had been less than 6 hours since I left. Alice was already breaking every single rule in the contract. She sat at the kitchen island, a lit cigarette dangling from her fingers, ashing directly onto my quartz countertop. Smoke curled up toward the ceiling sensors. In the living room, my 5-year-old nephew Lucas was drawing on my white walls with a permanent marker. Wendy watched him do it. She did not stop him. She was too busy moving my furniture, dragging my bookshelf across the hardwood floor to make room for a massive, ugly recliner. They must have hauled in from the U-Haul. I took a sip of hotel wine. The disrespect was total. It was absolute, and it was recorded. Alice pulled out her phone. I turned up the volume on my laptop. The audio was crystal clear. Yeah, she is gone. Alice laughed into the receiver. Total sucker. She thinks I am going to maintain the HVAC. Please, I am never leaving. This place is mine now. Mom says Megan owes us for all the years she did not help. She hung up and walked to the pantry. She opened the door and pulled out that stack of envelopes she had hidden earlier. She fanned them out, her face tight with anxiety. She was not looking at them like mail. She was looking at them like a bomb she was trying to defuse. I leaned forward. I clicked the zoom function on the camera feed. The resolution held. I could read the return address on the top envelope in bold, angry black ink. Kruger and Vance, attorneys at law, collections division. I paused the feed and opened the background check I had legally ordered under Clause 15. The report was disastrous. 3 evictions in 4 years, maxed out credit cards in default, and an active civil lawsuit for $28,400 in unpaid rent and damages filed by Kruger and Vance. Alice had not just lost housing, she had committed rental fraud and disappeared to avoid being served. She was hiding in my house. My phone alerted me to smoke in the kitchen, on the camera. Alice calmly lit another cigarette, unaware she was fully recorded. She thought she was squatting in a free mansion. She did not realize she was a fugitive in a glass house, and I had the coordinates. I terminated her employment by email, revoked her right to occupy the property, and gave her 2 hours to leave. She laughed, claiming squatters' rights. She believed she was a tenant. She was wrong. I shut off the internet, dropped the heat to 50 degrees, locked the system, sealed the fridge, and activated pulsing alert lights. Panic followed. One by one, allies cracked. Her partner left. The house grew colder. I then called Kruger and Vance and gave them her exact location. Within the hour, a process server knocked. Alice was served. The truth hit instantly. They fled the house in chaos, abandoning everything. I reset the system, changed all codes, removed her access, blocked every number, and reclaimed my home. By morning, it was professionally cleaned. Alice now faces wage garnishment and permanent rental blacklisting. Sitting alone in the restored silence, I understood the lesson clearly. The most powerful punishment is not confrontation. It is withdrawal, absence, freedom.